Welcome to Iraqi Dinar Update, your go-to source for the latest news, expert insights, and real-time developments on Iraq's currency, economy, and financial reforms. Whether you're a long-time investor or just curious about the dinar, you're in the right place. When we look at the world stage, the role of the United Nations is often misunderstood, reduced by many to soundbites or fleeting headlines. But in the case of Iraq, and particularly in regard to its ongoing monetary reform, the message coming from the UN seems subtly consistent and deliberately understated. If you listen closely, between the lines of official reports, press releases, and diplomatic statements, you'll notice a quiet but firm pattern. The monetary reform in Iraq is progressing. It is moving forward with increasing momentum, and while there's no declaration of the exact date when a final revaluation will occur, or what that revaluation rate might be, the reform process is undeniably active and well supported. The UN's involvement and messaging seem to have one key purpose: to reassure, to signal progress, and to maintain a steady international spotlight on Iraq's financial and institutional transformation without provoking premature speculation or instability. Why does the United Nations care about Iraq's monetary reform? On the surface, it might seem like an economic concern reserved for technocrats or international financial institutions like the IMF or the World Bank. But Iraq holds a unique place in the post-conflict international system. Following decades of war, sanctions, foreign occupation, terrorism, and internal political strife, Iraq has been gradually working to rebuild its state institutions, re-establish its sovereignty, and reintegrate into the global economy. The United Nations has been a crucial partner in that process, providing technical support, diplomatic legitimacy, and most importantly, serving as a kind of international validator for Iraq's journey back to financial and political normalcy. Monetary reform, in this context, is more than just about changing the value of the dinar or reintroducing a new currency. It's a symbol of sovereignty. It is the act of a country asserting control over its own economic destiny, creating a national currency that reflects internal strength, external credibility, and long-term development goals. From that perspective, when the United Nations speaks about Iraq, whether through periodic briefings to the Security Council, via their UNAMI, United Nations Assistance Mission for Iraq, communications, or through their partnerships with international donors and financial institutions, it is not trying to stoke speculation. It is trying to affirm the reality of a sovereign nation progressing step by step through the arduous journey of systemic reform. For investors and followers of the Iraqi dinar, this is often the point of greatest curiosity and greatest frustration. Everyone wants to know the date. Everyone wants to know the rate. But monetary reform, especially in a post-conflict and transitioning economy like Iraq's, is not a magic switch. It is a process. And processes take time, measured not in weeks or months, but often in years. What the United Nations seems to be signaling ever so carefully is that while no one knows the exact date or rate, the process is, in fact, moving forward. And not in a stagnant or uncertain way, but steadily, constructively, and with the backing of the international community. This message is especially important in the current global environment, where speculation runs rampant on social media, and misinformation can trigger unrealistic expectations or unnecessary panic. The United Nations provides a stabilizing voice. It doesn't add to the noise. It stays above it. When the UN signals that progress is being made, it's not engaging in hype. It's confirming that the international community continues to view Iraq as a country on a path toward full normalization. We must also consider the delicate balancing act that comes with reform of this scale. Iraq is managing a politically diverse and often fragmented internal structure, where federal authority must be reconciled with regional interests, and where legacy corruption must be addressed without derailing reform efforts. The United Nations understands this dynamic intimately. Through its long-standing presence in Iraq and deep partnerships with the government and civil society, the UN is uniquely positioned to support reform without interfering. It's not dictating the pace, it's supporting Iraq's sovereignty to define it. That's why the messages from the UN are so carefully worded. They want the world to know that Iraq is doing well, but they don't want that acknowledgement to be misinterpreted as a sign that some grand monetary event is about to occur overnight. They want observers, investors, and citizens alike to understand that monetary reform is part of a broader reconstruction effort that is succeeding, piece by piece, quietly, persistently. And perhaps most importantly, they want to make it clear that Iraq is not alone, that the world is watching, supporting, and prepared to welcome Iraq back into the financial and diplomatic mainstream when the time is right. The signal being sent is one of confidence, but also of patience. The reform is real. It is happening. It is underpinned by serious policy efforts, strategic partnerships, and consistent international validation. But it is not yet complete. And while many wish for a sudden announcement, a ringing bell of revaluation or redenomination, the reality is that such announcements will come only when every institutional box has been checked, every system has been tested, and every international standard has been met. In that sense, what the United Nations wants is quite clear. It wants Iraq to succeed on its own terms, within a framework of sovereignty and legitimacy. It wants Iraq's currency to be stable, its banking system to be secure, and its citizens to enjoy the benefits of financial dignity. The UN wants the international community to take note of this progress, not for speculative purposes, but to encourage investment, cooperation, and further reform. They want peace and prosperity to be sustained by capable institutions, not fleeting windfalls. So, when you hear the United Nations speak about Iraq, understand the weight behind those words. They are not just statements, they are signals. Signals that confirm Iraq is indeed on the right path. That despite the lack of a precise date or rate, the underlying mechanisms of reform are active and producing results. And those results, while sometimes invisible to the public eye, are building a foundation that will eventually support a stable, valuable, and internationally recognized currency. In the end, what the United Nations appears to want is nothing dramatic. It simply wants the truth to be recognized. Iraq's monetary reform is not a fantasy, it's a reality. One that's unfolding steadily, intelligently, and with a vision toward long-term national renewal. That is a message worth hearing, and more importantly, one worth understanding. Thanks for tuning into Iraqi Dinar Update. If you found this content helpful, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a beat on Iraq's evolving financial landscape. Stay informed, and stay ready.